Hi guys. So in today's video, I'm going to explore the idea that when we run from fear, we're actually running from parts of ourselves that are looking to be healed. Now, this video is going to be especially good for those of you who maybe find it really difficult to make changes in your life, or you avoid emotional conversations or confrontations, or maybe even seeing the same repeat patterns in your life and you just can't seem to get past them. So let's go ahead and dive in. So, on my own personal healing path, the one thing that I really probably have had the most difficulty understanding is that, continuing to run from things that scare us is actually making it more painful for us, emotionally painful, and sometimes physically painful, right? When we feel scared, we can feel it physically in our body, but also actually having the opposite effect of what we're actually seeking, right? We have uncomfortable things that come up in our lives and that are triggered, right? This discomfort gets triggered when we feel scared. And we associate this discomfort with things going on outside of us. But the real truth of it is that it's actually coming from inside of us, right? And it's maybe being triggered by things outside of us. But the overall solution to this is actually not trying to fix what's going on outside of us. And I spent a lot of years sort of chasing the external fixes until I finally realized that I really had to start going within and healing from within, right? To then create change on my outside, okay, on what was going on in my life. Now, what sort of precipitated me understanding this finally was I had this reoccurring dream over the years, and I've shared this before, but I'm going to share it here again because this was a really, really pivotal moment for me in my own healing path. And a lot of times we can get messages through our dream state, right? From our guides, from the universe, our intuition. So we want to pay attention to those. So I had this reoccurring dream where I was being chased by something, and I never really knew what exactly was chasing me. I just knew the feelings and sensations that I felt as I was being chased was this overwhelming fear and dread, and I just wanted to get away. I just kept running. I didn't turn around to look and see what was there. I just knew I just had to keep going. So I would, run from room to room in this house that I was in within this dream, and inevitably I would always wake up, and it was always the same thing. Until this one time in my life, I think I had just sort of started on my healing path at this point, like for real on my healing path, right? And it was the same dream happening again. And something in me just felt like I needed to stop and I needed to turn around and I needed to see what was chasing me because otherwise, the same thing's just going to keep happening, right? It's like when we do the same thing over and over again, but we expect to maybe get a different result. It just doesn't work that way, right? So finally in this dream, I realized I needed to turn around and see what was chasing me. And I felt ready to do that. And I turned around in this dream and I'll never forget this moment because when I turned around, it's still very emotional for me because it was a really deep healing moment. And I turned around and I saw myself standing there. And I just knew that everything that I was running to avoid in my life, in whatever way I was trying to avoid it, was always just parts of me that were just wanting to be seen and wanting to be felt and heard and just acknowledged even. And that running for them is just like running from myself, right? I'm just running from myself in circles, avoiding myself, avoiding the pains and the traumas and the hurts and whatever else was going on in my inside world that I didn't want to look at because it was too painful, it was too uncomfortable. But this was a moment in my life when I made a commitment to myself and a commitment to my healing and a commitment to changing my life. And so running wasn't really an option anymore. And I think all of us on a healing path, which if you're watching this, my guess is that that is the case for you. You're on a healing path, right? Or you wouldn't be watching this. And you've probably made this commitment to yourself as well. And healing is about really feeling and acknowledging these parts of us that just want to be seen in our life, right? We can't expect to transform our anxiety, for example, by avoiding the things that make us anxious. We have to get to the root of it, right? We have to cultivate ourselves at the root, and we have to weed out what doesn't belong, right? These things that we've developed over the years. Maybe they were beliefs that were instilled upon us as a child or from friends, well-meaning friends and family. And we have to pull those weeds out, right? So that we can get to the root of it, and we can get to our sort of the natural part of us, that inner spirit, right? Our spirit within that wants to then shine out into the world. So I want to kind of next look at this through a lens of how, when the discomfort comes up in our life, what kind of responses do we take when discomfort arises? And this is kind of like, you might have heard it like the terms like, our nervous system response. So there's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And so I want to kind of go through those 4 examples just to sort of give you an idea, right? Because if we have something that is fearful in our life that we're running from, we want to start to recognize our sort of nervous system responses, so that we have something to work with at that point, right? Because once we see something, we can't unsee it. So the first one I want to talk about is fight. This is where we might get really either aggressive or defensive, or we try to control the environment in some way. This can be through raising our voice, or it can be through just trying to push our agenda onto somebody else, right? You will do what I say. I think of our interactions with our children sometimes. If they're doing something that we don't like, we can suddenly sort of pounce on them in a way like, stop doing that, don't do this, do that, do this instead. And, we're really just trying to assert force because something in us gets triggered and doesn't feel safe in our current environment in some way. Okay? So the next one is flight. And this is one I did very often in my own healing path, where I avoided things. I would avoid social situations because they were scary for me. I would avoid putting myself out there. And, we just really try to avoid the discomfort that stirs up. A lot of people with maybe anxiety and stuff like that, they might especially be more prone to avoiding things to not feel that anxiety, right? The next one is freeze. And that sounds exactly like how it sounds, right? We get frozen in place, and that is our way of sort of avoiding or numbing ourselves, right, to whatever feelings are coming up or being triggered or stirred up inside of us. I find that, as a healer myself, I really understand this one very deeply, because there was a lot of time where I was really frozen into not wanting to put myself out there, not wanting to move forward with creating my business, because I just felt frozen, right? The fear was so overwhelming. It was triggering that sort of sense of not good enough. That was a part of me that felt not good enough, right? And so I would procrastinate, right? Procrastination. And we don't get through these things by continuing to procrastinate. We have to realize that we're maybe making excuses, or we're coming up with reasons. Well, I need X, Y, and Z before I do A, B, and C, right? All these little ways that we can prevent ourselves from moving forward and staying frozen in the same place, in the same time, instead of actually walking forward with the fear, right? Which is what we actually ultimately need to do. That's how we incorporate these parts of ourselves and help to recognize them and feel through them and transform them. Okay? All right, and then the last one is fawn. Now, this is one where we might sort of pacify the situation, right? If somebody else is getting triggered or stirred up, we might do something that we don't want to do to sort of keep the peace, right? I think of this like the word peacekeeper comes to mind for this one. And this is something that I often have done on my own path, where maybe my situations from childhood were all about keeping the peace, because if somebody in the household was prone to angry outbursts, we don't want to trigger them in any way. So it's like walking on eggshells. So if you've had this experience of walking on eggshells in your own past, maybe look at this one to see if there's some tendencies to sort of people please in ways that are really um, not truly what your heart desires, right? We might make decisions that don't really agree with us just because we don't want to upset somebody or rock the boat. So a really good place to start with all this, to sort of begin to not run from ourselves, right, is take those four things and see what you can think of, what comes to mind for you. Because as we bring our awareness to the situation, then we start to see things. And once we see something, we can actually work with it, right? We have something to work with. But if we continue to do all these things unconsciously, which is often what we're doing when we're running from fear, then we're just going to keep, just like my dream, we're going to keep running through the same cycle over and over again until we finally get to the point where we are tired of it and we turn around, right? So we want to sort of hop off of this loop, hop out of this cycle. And if you start to look at those different ways that you avoid scary things in your life, then you can at least begin to do that. And then once we become aware of things, we know that the universe will sort of begin to direct us in that way of beginning to heal through these things. Now, as I was sort of tuning in to what wanted to come through for this particular video, the one phrase that came through was, if we hold on to fear, then we can't create space for love in our lives. And to me, that is so true, right? If we really hold on to these parts of us that feel scared and uncomfortable, then there's just no space. It gets crowded out, right? Like if you have a garden bed that's full of weeds, then the other stuff that you plant just isn't going to have the the healthy environment for it to bloom and grow the way that you want it to. And the same goes for us, right? So we got to sort of clear out this fear so that love can come forward and take that place where it really should be, right? It's about connecting to our true self and our inner self, right? Our spirit within. So make a commitment to yourself to move through the fear, right? To feel the fear that's coming forward and create space for love in your life. And we really do this one step at a time, right? All these little steps together create big change and transformation in our life. So keep going, keep healing, and don't be afraid to go within. If you enjoyed today's content, please give a like and subscribe. I appreciate the support for my channel. If you want to follow along with me more closely, then I do put out a monthly newsletter and you can sign up for that. I'll put the link in the description below. If you want more information on my healing services, or if you would like to find some free resources for your healing path, or follow along on my own healing journey as I share it through my blog postings, then you can check out my website, thespiritwithin.com. I'll put all the links in the description below. I really appreciate y'all being here today. Until we see each other again, y'all take care. Bye, guys.